Security isn't a one-man show, but too many CISO build teams that are lopsided. Too many risk analysts, not enough hands-on fixers. If you want to build an effective security team, you need the right mix of personalities. So today, we're breaking down the 4 roles every CISO needs on their team. Let's get into it.
All right, so Aftab, we were out to dinner, and you had a really good premise on how to build a team. And you were talking a little bit about the function of, some CISOs from a risk background, they come in, they build these teams that are heavy with risk analysts and more of a GRC focus, whereas the, heavy technical CISO comes in and he's building out architects and operations, and there's always a balance, right? So why don't you tell me why, lack of balance is a mistake?
There's no one size fits all to start for, but I do think that there are pieces or I should say functions that you have to have, and as a program, and depending on the life of the program, whether it's kind of early on in the life or later on into maturity. But I'm taking it from we are join an organization and get to kind of build it from the ground up. So you have to make some initial hires to get the program off the ground. So from that perspective, it's important to have that balance. But from that perspective, there are kind of 4 of them that I'll highlight and that you and I talked about. So obviously the first one, like a security operations lead, right? And you can coin the quote unquote title how you so may, but this would be someone that leads kind of the IR function, the detection engineering, the SOC function. This is the the folk that'll do that portion of the role, right? So the blocking and tackling when it comes to say you're implementing a WAF or firewalls or EDR, like the telemetry that's leveraged from it, and then making sense of it, the enrichment, the threat intelligence, like that function would be one of the first. The second one. And this is as much as folks may this is one that you absolutely have to have is your GRC function, the policies, the risks, the compliance, right? And so bringing someone in to lead that, right? So whether that's depending on the business as well, right? So this would also include like supporting, if you're say for example a SaaS company, how do you support, customer engagements? Obviously, the blocking and tackling when it comes to compliance, right? The certifications, the recertifications, and then, the policies, right? Like, okay, put aside, the customer engagements, put aside the actual, the certifications and what frame, but what policies and who's going to own those policies and who's going to drive the implementation of it. So that would be, the second, and then again, if these are the first 4 hires, the other 2 are not, but the other 2 would be, kind of like an overarching architect, someone who can start embedding security within different systems, right? Infrastructure teams, starts having conversations with like the cloud teams or a number of different groups to help be kind of an overarching support to them as they build out new services, as they look to make changes or build out new applications, or, and if you have a really sharp one who can do not only infrastructure, but application, that would be another role. And then finally, someone that to lead the identity piece of it. And identity means so many different things. You talk about, the identity that you and I are used to, service accounts. You talk about access, what that looks like, non-human identities, which is kind of a newer phenomenon. But you would want someone to head that function and really have a plan and a strategy around what our identity strategy would be. How do we get to as close as, least privilege as possible, how to outline RBAC for the different functions and the different teams. But those would be the ones that I would start with. And I think that, as the organization grows, then you can start segmenting those, right? So the operations could be like a SOC lead or incident response lead, like red teaming, blue teaming. things like that. The GRC side, right? You can break them up to compliance and audits. I mean, there's a number of ways that you would, third party risk, right? There's a number of ways that those big buckets could be further segmented, but these would be the ones that I would start with first.
So when you consider this, you're stepping in, obviously we're talking about core 4 leaders rolling into the CISO position, and obviously in a lot of cases, this is going to be dependent on the business. What is the model? What are they trying to achieve? If they even have any compliance type of functions behind them. But would you weight that differently? Like when I think about setting up teams and what they're responsible for from a program or people perspective, how many people they're going to have to support, what are the different potential applications, or I think about the strategic functions that they have to do. Some of these are very siloed, but that silo has multiple arms underneath it. For instance, IAM is a giant field.
It is.
Having one person, tied into this as a leader and multiple people that span across the board, and SOC operations, as you kind of described. But, from an order of importance, if you had to stage these in, would you approach them all equally weighted, or are you weighting these differently?
No, well, circumstance would dictate it, but if I were to be pushed up against a corner and says, look, give me your one top 2, I mean, it would be the GRC and the incident response, right? Those 2 things that I think, at minimum, you have to have some resemblance of, right? So you have to have some function in place if you're going to start a program. And if I had even, quote unquote, further segment and say, okay, what would be your first hire? It would probably be a GRC team member, right?
Wow.
With policy. Yeah.
Sure.
It would start with policy, because at the end of the day, the policy drives, I'm going to say everything, but everything stems from the policy. Like we're all pointing to, okay, what should we be doing and what shouldn't we be doing? And so having that in place first is important. And that provides clarity to all the teams that you would interface with, right? Imagine walking up to an application team and says, hey, your session life should be X. And they're like, well, why did we choose that? And you can have a debate till you're blue in the face. But if the policy states that, then, okay, we've agreed as an organization that this is what we want. And then our policy will drive the technical behavior that we need to achieve that outcome. So I hate to say this, are some more important than the other? They're all important. But if you're forced to prioritize, and you're coming, and I'm assuming this is coming into building a new program. I mean, that would be, and I think it would flow naturally as well, right? Because, you come in, you join, you start building policies, and you start realizing that we need folks to help implement these policies, put controls into policies. Okay, now you have the controls in place. Okay, who's looking at these alerts? How do we know if there's nefarious behavior? Okay, we need something. So I think they also transition nicely as well.
Certainly. No, as a longtime GRC practitioner and leader in the space, I'm ecstatic to hear you say that. I don't know that is a common belief, though, to be, quite honest with you. I think that there's, some context of like, we could build policies and we can have specific functions in place without a GRC lead and go and march toward that order, and you see that in certain capacities. And I think a lot of it, like you said, it has to do with maturity. It has to do with company size. It has to do with what their mission is. But I will certainly, commend you for bringing that up and echo that top 2 of Aftab's top 4, one of which includes GRC, but I can't wait to see in the comments anyone that is that's coming back and listening to this and seeing what their response is, because like you said, they're all 4 extremely important. I would tend to agree that incident response and operations side is that day-to-day is cooking right away.
Yeah, it is. But also, Scott, like, I mean, we can have an emotional attachment to something. Like, I can say like, I'm a tech at heart and I've built systems and, I started my career on a very technical track. That's an emotional statement. But if I'm asking myself, and I always joke with my wife that, I pride myself on being as pragmatic as possible. And so the hardest part about it is not letting my feelings get in front of me. But if you just think about it, like, what is the natural way a program evolves? And what is the way that you can create it and structure it where there's least amount of friction? And I think that the order of operation in this example that we're talking about would highlight that, right? Like, I just don't think you're going to have, I think you would have a tremendous amount of friction and counter pressure and momentum if you don't have policies in place or if you don't have some guiding principle, right? So I think that we can fool ourselves, but I think if we are being honest, I think that would be a nice structure. Now, ideally,
Right.
no one gets put into that scenario where they have to pick, but
Yeah, almost never, right? You're
Exactly.
either you're inheriting and you're changing, or you're making a position to build more, expand out, get out of the multi hat approach, right? The person that's doing everything. Yeah, I certainly think that most of our industry would fall into that bucket of. There's almost never a position of starting from the ground up and doing it in a way that if they could go back in time, they would do it differently.
And just to take, I've talked to a lot of quote unquote CISOs today who just don't have the appetite for it. Like, overwhelmingly, if folks reach a point in their career where there's not, hey, would you take a role where you have to build it from ground up? Most would say no, or have said no to me. So a lot of it would be coming into an existing system and then looking at it and saying, like, what tweaks would I want to make, or what fundamental shifts would I want to put into place? So I don't know how how many times, I don't know. I can even ask myself that question. Would I be willing to go and start it from scratch? It would take some soul searching. I mean, it's not for the faint of heart, especially if you haven't done the day-to-day stuff in so long, right? But I always think about, like, hey, my job is to set a direction and allow us to get there, and the most amount of momentum and least amount of friction that we can avoid, put in place, the better. All right, Scott. Well, we now that we got over the agreeing on one thing, what do we have next, man?
The best security teams don't just function, they win. And if you look at the most dominant sports teams of all time, they're built the same way security teams are. So let's see how they compare. Here's the game. We'll each name a legendary sports team, then the other host has to match each of Aftab's core four to a player on that team. Let's see how you do. All right, Aftab, let's start with the first team. This one is near and dear to my heart as a lifelong Chicagoan, even though I'm in Florida now. The 1996 Chicago Bulls. Who's playing each role? Your players are MJ, Scottie Pippen, Dennis Rodman, and Steve Kerr. Let's hear it.
You picked Steve Kerr, Tony Kukoc. Was it Kukoc on that team as well? But
there was a lot of stars, but for the purposes of what we're talking about here, Steve Kerr seems like a good fit.
Okay. All right. Let me think about this. Okay. So, all right, Pippen, Jordan, Rodman, and Kerr. Okay, so let's do it like this. Pippen would be my architect. Okay. Strong all-around game, able to wear multiple hats, good fundamentals. The rebound king himself, Dennis Rodman, would be my ops lead. He loves doing the dirty work, and I think that he would be the unsung hero here. So I would, and then Kerr would be my GRC lead. Having as a Warriors fan and seeing him coach over the last 10 plus years for us, his patience, how pragmatic and how thoughtful he is, how he finds consensus. It's a very difficult function, so to have that EQ is very important. I think I couldn't put a Jordan in that role, so I just by default Jordan would then get the IM role because he is the greatest, but because the other team, Pippen and Rodman and Kerr fit perfectly the other roles, I would just have to slide Jordan in the identity because of his determination. I'm sure he'll figure it out just fine.
Is looking to get back into work, and he can work for you as an IM lead. I'll let him know.
I don't think I can pay him enough.
He doesn't need money anymore. He doesn't need money anymore.
Sure. Okay, so you put a difficult one on me, Scott. So let me give you one as well. So 2001 New England Patriots. Who fits where? Okay, your players are, well, your team is Tom Brady, Bill Belichick, Mike Vrabel, and Adam Vinatieri.
All right. I think this actually is a little bit easier than the one I gave you. I'm going to go with Tom Brady as the obsolete. This guy, we've all heard about his just relentless work ethic, always on the field, always going. This guy, he may not sleep. And that is specifically what an ops leader in security needs to be able to do, is operate with limited sleep and be able to be everywhere and just know the entire playbook all the times, right? Okay. I'm going to go with Bill Belichick as the architect. Having, key pieces on how everything comes together, being able to lead across different domains and different disciplines. I'm going to go with Vrabel as my GRC lead. Just the
really
just from like a defensive vision, being able to understand, he's got to understand his side as well as the other side. I mean, that's true on both offense and defense, but just the function of being able to, block the most active risk that's there, really isolate and identify it. And then I'm going to go with Vinatieri for my IAM manager. This is a person solely focused in his role, somebody that can, line up and figure out exactly where it needs to be, focusing on the core principles of, in his case, being a kicker, the IAM role, everything identity, everything kicking. That's my squad.
Okay. All right.
All right. So last one, and this is of course going in your court here, just because this is your core four. So we're going to get you twice. I only have to go once. So last one, 2023 Kansas City Chiefs. Your players are Mahomes, Kelsey, Chris Jones, and Andy Reid. What you got for me?
I like to disqualify this team because they beat my 49ers. So I have zero. But if you're forcing me to choose, again, I'm not happy about this because, again, they beat my Niners. Okay. You have to give respect where respect is due. Patrick Mahomes would be the architect. I think in this instance, without him, it just doesn't work. So I would, and he can do so many things on the field. So I would make him the architect. Andy Reid would be my GRC lead. He's the coach, and I think just given the collection of folks to choose from, Andy Reid makes the most sense. He had gone through some difficulties in his life, and I think that just builds a certain personality that's probably very conducive to the role. And then the last two, identity would be Travis Kelce, because he was able to identify Taylor Swift very well, so I trust his ability to choose. And then Chris Jones, because he's a beast, and just in that ops role, I just see him be able to just tear down and do whatever's needed to just get the job done. So that would be if you're forcing me to choose, again, they beat my Niners, so that would be the way I lay it out.
The world of security under being sports superstars. CISOs know the drill. Too much data, too many threats, and never enough time. One misstep and suddenly you're in the headline news for all the wrong reasons. That's why smart security teams trust Varonis. With real-time threat detection, insider risk management, and automated data security controls, Varonis helps you stop threats before they become disasters. No more guesswork, no more putting out fires, just proactive security that actually works. Want to see how it's done? Head to Varonis.com and book a demo today.
A security team is only as strong as its people. You can have the best tools, the biggest budget, and the smartest analysts, but if your team is dysfunctional, none of it matters. In this next segment, we're walking through 2 security team scenarios where something went terribly wrong. After each story, we'll break down what happened and how a CISO could have fixed it, using principles from Patrick Lencioni's popular book, The 5 Dysfunctions of a Team. Let's get into it. Scott, the first scenario, the incident response implosion. A mid-sized financial services company suffered a ransomware attack. The security team had tools in place, EDR, XDR, strong backups, but the incident response team completely fell apart under pressure. The SOC analyst suspected something was wrong hours before the ransom note appeared, but didn't escalate it because they didn't want to look incompetent. The incident commander refused to take input from the junior team members, dismissing what they found. The engineering team sat on important system logs, assuming security had it handled. When leadership finally got involved, no one had a clear timeline of events, and the attackers had already exfiltrated 2 terabytes of data. All right, Scott, what do you do, my man?
Yeah, I think this is just and unfortunately probably happens more often than not, just an absence of trust. If there is not a scenario where we can see something, say something without there being any retaliation or any, concern about job loss or retaliation, something along those lines, right? Like there's never going to be a system that really works. So I would say in this case, CISO has to step in, create a culture of, speak up if you see something, you're going to be safe. This is a scenario, unless you're malicious in your intent, of course. We got to get to any issue like these things that happen, especially when materiality of data is getting out the door, the quicker the better. Anything that you're not seeing and responding to too fast is basically meaningless at that point in time. We need to also have the postmortem that doesn't have blame. Things happen. We're all operating at breakneck speed, trying to innovate, trying to get jobs done, trying to meet customer demand. These are areas that we can identify for improvement. So postmortem should be looking at blameless foundation. And then, the other piece on this is just like every other, we were talking about sports stars earlier, right? Practice makes perfect. Tabletop exercises, really in stress testing that as well, identifying how this is going to operate. It just makes that routine, that muscle memory come in. So I just think it's a function of building that safety and that trust in that team and that organization is going to make a lot of the problems that we're seeing in this case go away.
Just one quick question for you. Like, who I hate to blame anyone, but like, whose fault is that?
That's a great question, man. I mean, this could be and extend well beyond, just a scenario of, this one incident, right? If somebody can't say something, when we used to do our security awareness training and our tabletop exercises and in my past as well, it was always big on, hey, if you see something you don't know that it's right or wrong or whatever the case may be, you could talk to your manager. You could, manager should hopefully come and talk to a security function or a leader or the CISO or what have you. But, we're all in this together, right? We win together, we lose together at the end of the day. So when it comes down to how that culture is built, it's hard to say pinpoint on any one person. Right. We obviously want to be well aware of the person that's malicious in intent, the insider threat, the person that is, exposing data in ways that they shouldn't be. But we should also have some of the checks and balances to catch that in the first place. But, based on the scenario that you've put up here, I just think that it's lack of maturity, quite frankly.
Okay.
So this is your scenario now, my friend, the never ending vendor debate. So a healthcare security team spent 6 months debating whether to switch to a new MDR provider, right? Half of the team believed that the current MDR provider was ineffective, they were slow in response times and had poor detection rates, but the other half feared that switching would cause even more risk. Because onboarding a new provider could mean, gaps in coverage, and we don't know, the typical fear of change. The CISO avoided making a final call because he didn't want to alienate either group. So meanwhile, the SOC team kept struggling with the delayed threat response, but no one openly challenged leadership. So what's the solution here, Aftab?
Wow. Okay. I'm going to just deal with this head on. The solution here is this: the CISO needs to step up. And I know some folks may not like to hear that, but as with I think the previous example that we talked about, the the CISO has to set the tone and has to be willing to make the difficult decisions. You have to encourage healthy debate. You have to be willing to listen and take to heart the different perspectives within your team. And I think doing both of those things are very important. And then the other thing I'll highlight in this scenario, there were two comments that you made. Half the team believed that the current MDR vendor was slow and had poor detection rates. I would hope that was those statements would be made with accompanying data, right? So what does slow mean? I don't know what that means, so someone will have to quantify that for me. Response time, poor detection rates. Okay, I don't know what that means, right? And then, I think the other portion of this is the team needs to look at itself as well, because a vendor is a partnership, and so the deficiency in the vendor is not necessarily you point the finger. I think you have to ask yourself, have I supported the vendor to the point to where they should not be making certain mistakes? So those would be those would be a few things that I would highlight and take away. And I think just the last piece of it as well is that though the decision lies with the quote unquote leader in some cases, the leader should be transparent to the organization and to the team of how you are coming to your conclusions, right? So for example, if I'm going to judge you on something, it's fair for you, and also it's encompassing on me to then say to you, hey, Scott, I'm going to judge you on characteristics A, B, and C. And the CISO needs to have some framework, or the team should have some collaborative framework that they then point to when they're making some of these decisions. Now, look, how you choose to create that framework, it would vary on the organization. But I am a firm believer, and from performance reviews to vendor selection to how we choose projects, you have to be transparent and open about how you come to your decisions. No one person, I don't care how smart you are, I don't care how much experience you have, I don't care how big is your paycheck or what seat at the table you're at. Like, no one person has all the answers. And to think or to believe that I'm going to just provide data and then the CISO is going to magically come with the right answer, that's not, I think that's setting yourself for long-term failure. So that would be the last portion of it that I would highlight. And then that all stems from the leader. You built that culture. You force your teams to make data-driven decisions. And then you be transparent around how you go along and come to your conclusions.
Yeah, I think, accountability, right? Like you said, have the framework. There shouldn't be any mystery. There's enough mystery in life, but for some of these things, especially when you can have, quantifiable metrics that need to be hit or not, it really comes down to, like you said, transparency and accountability. All right, Aftab, pull us into the next one.
In this segment, we're playing Trust or Bust. We'll go back and forth with a prompt. The other host has to call it trust if they like it or bust if they don't. Then defend their take. Let's get into it. All right, Scott. First up, letting AI tools screen cybersecurity candidates. Trust or bust?
Bust. The whole function of AI or any of these pre-screening tools that are going to eliminate candidates to me takes the human element out of something that's very human. I say bust.
Okay. Fair enough.
All right, so now it's your turn. Trust or bust? Requiring candidates to do technical assessments before the interviews.
Bust. With one caveat that it depends on the role. Mm-hmm. But security is really a people's problem. So having a strong background is great. Doesn't mean you'll have success because you're strong technically. Bust.
Fair. Got it.
Okay. Next one. Hiring cybersecurity professionals from non-tech industries. Finance, healthcare, trust or bust?
Trust. I think when it comes down to, you just said it last time, security, as much as it is technical, it is a people, centric type of approach and strategy that needs to be taken. Having and pulling in people from different industries with different backgrounds, different experience, they see and can help build the greater of the whole. So I'm going with totally trust.
Okay. Trust.
Okay.
Gotcha.
Trust.
All right.
Gotcha. All right.
All right, here's one for you, my friend. So it is requiring a CISSP or CISM for all senior security roles. Trust or bust?
Bust. But I understand the place certifications play in any technical space. But from my experience, and I'm going to localize this a bit, from my experience, folks they know how to pass these tests. So just because you have a certain certification, my experience has been most folks don't understand the material. So it's a bust for me.
It's a bust. It's a boot camp bust.
Yeah. All right, my friend. Last one. Recruiting from your competitors. Trust or bust?
This is a tall one. I'm going to say trust. There is some position of all is fair in love and war, right? Competition, pulling in somebody that knows the background, the industry, that does have a benefit to it. No different than it has a benefit to pull somebody in that's coming in net new to an industry and doesn't have that longevity or background. It just helps round out the whole. But when I think about capabilities that exist, as long as I'm doing this with the right, integrity, and I'm not, prying this person of how is this competitor doing this or doing that, and all the whole non-compete and everything else that comes with it. I just think it's an opportunity for plug and play, and it's an opportunity for a little bit more familiarity with the industry itself and the business model and how you get somebody to be effective quickly.
Okay, yeah, I would agree.
If this episode made you rethink how you build your security team, we'd love it if you took 30 seconds to rate the show. Just head over to Spotify, search the CISO Circle, tap the 3 horizontal dots, and rate the show. It'll take you less than a minute, and it'll help us get this show in front of other forward-thinking security leaders like you.
Bruce Willis can save the world with a smirk and a well-timed one-liner, but does live free or die hard hold up the actual reality of cybersecurity? In this last segment, Scott and I are watching a scene from the 2007 classic to see if Hollywood got it right. Here we go.
All the lights are green.
Huh?
All the lights are green. Let's go. Let's go. Right now.
You gotta go.
Let's go. Get your bag.
Bruce Willis.
Let's go.
What a shame.
Let's go. I've never been in a car. You all right? Well, very exciting. Here we go. This way. Come on. Here we go. Here we go. Yeah, I've been in a car. What are we doing? It's a little thing they invented back in the 60s called jogging. You're gonna love it. Come on.
I won a holiday trivia recently where top 5 Christmas movies, Die Hard was one of the answers. I can't think of anything else but while I watch this, but let's see.
Nice sock. I wish my incident response team caught issues that
Oh,
fast.
system crashes. L-Train Networks.
Okay,
Let's get him outside.
come to that conclusion really quickly.
Critical alerts. Under attack.
Who needs automation when you have a guy who can navigate systems like that?
Another movie snippet here with the overlaying windows that get to move around like Minority Report. We need to figure out how to get that in our systems here.
Okay, so alert comes in, decision made, evacuating of the building. That's quick. Fantastic, good job.
Tell the local security guards to be ready. We got FBI, we've got the police, we've got local security.
One man on the fourth floor, got it? Masks on.
The way to get this
Hazmat's
information
here.
of what
Oh,
needs
this
to
is
be
gonna
done
get
so
interesting.
quickly is fantastic.
Run a trunk search of these data crashes. See if we can ID the point of origin.
Wasn't he just outside the building and now he's back in?
Stage 2.
Now markets are crashing because
We're already starting to panic.
The immediate Wall Street reaction. I might be too sarcastic here, but this is ramping up real nice.
Useful idiots, as Lenin would say. Prep the video package.
DC transportation systems crashing, and they just hit the entire financial sector. Everything, all of it.
Give me the Secretary of Trans and Treasury on the line and the Chairman of the FCC. Let's go, people. Somewhere somebody left a
Going from transportation to financial
Okay.
sectors. Yeah, I think you said it. Like the speed in which, I mean, all right. So if we were going to put some reality lens over what
Yes.
we just watched, the speed of which that all this information is coming in, and the reaction to not only just the SOC but the financial markets that are getting hit right away. I mean, hey, there must have been a network cable that connected the train in DC to Wall Street. That's instant. It's instant.
and some dummy left it unprotected, right?
And the other piece about that, so like let's think about this, and not to say that this isn't real maybe in certain areas of the world, but like you're
Okay.
in the van, you're in the delivery van, sitting outside of where all the action is taking place with your team of hackers, and you have the ability to just the video package, release the video package. I mean, some of this stuff is, obviously it's meant for the big screen, but
Yeah, good job with this.
give us a real take on like how does it really go down?
Number one is the ability to come to the conclusion that quickly is difficult, right? Nothing's ever that quote unquote binary or black and white. Telemetry is fed in, and then you say for instance on the incident response side, you're correlating things, you're trying to make sense of it, and then this is under the assumption that you have perfect telemetry to begin with. You may get a log or an alert that's from system X, and then you may have some inkling that something's wrong, but you need to kind of correlate it with, say, system Y. Wait a minute, there's a gap in logging, or maybe we do have logging in the log type that we need, or there's a missing field within. So that's number one. The fact that they have everything in one place and then things just light up and and majority of incident response teams are dealing with false positives. So the scene where they're sitting there and then all of a sudden the light goes red and boom, everyone jumps and this is a true positive. I would love that. And then the other portion of it that I find, I mean, it's great TV, but the other portion of it is, okay, you come to some conclusion and then you have a plan of what to do next relatively quickly. And typically it's let's isolate a system, right? Like how do you isolate the infected? In this scenario, you have to evacuate people. That would take such a huge coordination, assuming you have everyone who needs to be contacted identified. And they know what to do when you get a phone call, right? Like if I call a different building and say evacuate someone now within my own company, okay, that can be an undertaking, let alone, right? So the point that I'd highlight here is it's great to watch on TV, but all of these things that happen take planning, take muscle memory, take like perfect telemetry, perfect detections, and then you still may not get it correct. So yeah, it's great. I'm laughing because I wish I.
Yeah, no doubt.
Similar-
and hopefully
similar
you're
to-
stopping the attack well ahead
Oh,
of anything
gosh.
like this taking place, right? I mean, you've got layers. You've got
Yeah,
layers
yeah.
until mass hysteria takes place.
Yeah, and what you highlighted too, one system affecting completely separate. one org infection crosses over to the other. I mean, it happens, but not to that, not as quickly as it was highlighted. Great.
All in 3 minutes.
Exactly. That's fantastic. Okay, good job.
Every security team is being told to integrate AI, but most CISOs are flying blind. Are you actually making your security stronger, or are you introducing new vulnerabilities that you don't even see? In this next episode, we're breaking down the AI tools that actually deliver results. With everyone and their mother talking about AI these days, this is an episode you won't want to miss.
And remember, security fuels innovation. Complexity is the enemy, and collaboration is the way. Until next time.